Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go.
So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Well, there it is. Welcome back in to another episode of Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, joined as always by the one, the only Scott Barzilla. Scott, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Just an opening question for you. Being this, as we record this, Fat Tuesday, is there any go-to things you do for Fat Tuesday?
Not really. No, I don't know. I kind of am past the giving something up for Lent. I kind of more try and make a Lenten promise. So, I don't really feel the need to, say overindulge on Fat Tuesday. I don't live near a good Mardi Gras parade. Really don't want to spend money on beads, at this point in my life. So, yeah, I don't really have. What about you, Scott?
Well, the church has a nice pancake dinner that they do every year from the Knights of Columbus. Absolutely free. They have some nice sausage. They have some king cake. Got some orange juice or, water for those of us who don't want to add the extra sugar. And they had sugar-free syrup too. So that was an added bonus for me. So it kept the blood sugar down, but got to indulge in some good pancakes. And every free dinner is a good dinner.
Oh, yeah. In college, it was, what's your favorite meal? A free meal. Or, what's your favorite beer? Free beer would be the answer there. But no.
Or cold.
Cold. Preferably cold, then preferably free, or free then cold, because I can make it cold. Just give me 30 minutes in the freezer. But no, it was, I don't really typically celebrate Fat Tuesday. That's just not one that we really did as a family growing up. I don't know.
So I know we're going to get on a touchy/painful subject, but to rewind behind what we're going to talk about next, how did your Super Sunday spread go?
I had a fantastic spread, Scott. We, as we discussed, got to bring it out in phases, right? You can't just throw it all out at once. So, we started out with the charcuterie board, and then I brought out the wings and the homemade fries. And then right about halftime, as Usher was performing, I had the TV on outside, had the pizza oven going, and I made a cheese, a pepperoni, and a meatball pizza. So I feel like I did a pretty top-notch job, if you don't say so.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that does sound like a good spread. We had the charcuterie board to start off with. Always love a good cheese. It's always something good. We ended up doing sliders.
Okay.
So and then Janet made some cookies that were very popular. So we didn't do quite as much, but it was enough to keep everybody satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, looking back on the evening, the food was definitely the highlight of it. As I've talked about many times on this podcast, my wife is a diehard 49ers fan. The way that you and I feel about, the Astros, the way that my day is ruined when the Astros lose is the way that my wife feels about her football team. So, watching that game with her was painful, quite frankly, at times.
Yeah, we were the three of us were rooting for the 49ers. My parents were rooting for the 49ers. My sister and brother-in-law were rooting for the Chiefs. And I think it was a combination. I think what they said is they were hoping that Taylor Swift would make some kind of an announcement on the stage.
I was hoping
And
for a proposal myself.
well, they were hoping for a Biden a Joe Biden endorsement
Oh,
on the
I could care
stage.
less. I was hoping
Yeah,
that we got like the
yeah,
old like Boise State, like get the Statue of Liberty play, go for the game winning touchdown,
yeah,
or the Carlos Correa win the World Series, pop out the ring. I was
yeah,
hoping
yeah.
that's
I
what we were
mean,
gonna get.
I was hoping for that too after the end result, but I kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. But
Why
the
though?
other
Let me say
thing,
because I honestly thought it might be coming because he's just the kind of guy who would pull that off pretty well. So why would you feel that that was not coming?
I'm hearing that both of them are kind of into dates of significance,
Mm.
and so
Okay.
like
No.
there's
Hey.
something,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So I don't know.
Haley thought he
And
might announce her whatever album she's re-recording next, and I didn't think he would want to take the spotlight away from her. So
so
we'll see.
I guess my question is, if you're Taylor Swift, do you have any kind of pause after seeing your boyfriend assault a senior citizen carrying a Waffle House menu?
No, I don't think. I think when you choose to hang with the Kelsey family, you get what you get, right? Like you've seen Jason at either best slash worst, depending on what whose opinion of it you take. You've seen drunk ass Travis now after winning a championship. I don't know. Like I mean, you know what you're getting into when you're dating a Kelsey. I feel like. I mean, if you listen to the
Yeah,
story of Jason and his wife's first date, he literally blacked out drunk at a bar and had to be carried home by his fellow offensive lineman on him and his current wife's first date. So, I mean, you can only go up from there.
yeah, I guess so. Because that was something, and that was actually a popular topic on talk radio, early this week was, if it had been like, say, Chris Jones or one of the other players, doing that, would it have been taken differently?
Probably.
And so that, it kind of makes you wonder, why is Travis so special? Well, he's a Hall of Famer in waiting, obviously. So that's one reason why he's special. But yeah, we were rooting hard for the 49ers. I mean, obviously we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the game itself, but so if I had to give you your pick of the commercial of the evening,
Oh, it was
where are
Ben
you going
Affleck.
for that one?
It was Ben Affleck, and it wasn't even close. Because quite frankly, looking back on the whole night, the only commercial I even remember is the Ben Affleck Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
I like that one. Actually, the one I
Actually, let
liked
me
was,
amend my statement. The only commercial I remember for a good thing is the Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
I thought that one was good. I thought the one where Jennifer Aniston forgot David Schwimmer.
Oh, that was pretty funny.
That
That
one
was pretty funny.
that was pretty funny. And then, of course, any commercial with Beyonce is got to be up there. So
I don't know if I
that would
remember
be my
that one.
top. Well, she's dropping her album as well.
Right.
And so you had a guy just like recording her in like different situations and messing it up. And so the last, like she had her running for president and him, messing up the recording. And then you had her in space weightless dancing, and then he messed it up and pressed the button and made her, gravity return, fall down to the ground. So it was just, yeah, it was good stuff.
I definitely missed that one. I don't know. Maybe that was when I was pulling a pizza out of the oven or something. But yeah, it was. Commercials were better for the most part. I think more of them were on tone than they'd been in the past. I think one specific set of commercials was awful, and
Oh yeah.
I think the people who spent $17 million on the He Gets Us commercials don't get him. And I'll just like leave that
Oh,
at that. Like I think the last
I was
thing
going to say, are
Jesus
we getting? So are we teasing a future part of the show here?
possibly we'll save that for later, Scott. But yeah, there was only there was only one, I guess, set of commercials that I was just like, wow, that was bad. But
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the
even
last couple years, there's been a few where you're like, what the hell was that? But you know what I feel like was missing this year, Scott? There was no hilarious Doritos commercial.
no, that's true. And I was thinking that the Arnold commercials weren't that bad. They weren't,
That's what I'm saying.
they
There
weren't
weren't
great.
terrible commercials.
No,
There was two terrible commercials. But other than that, like the ones that tried to be funny were fairly funny. Like there was no big swings and misses. I didn't feel like other than the He Gets Us, there was no one else who ran to the internet and be like, "What the hell was that?" Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like after the crypto thing, where like they put all the celebrities in that ad, now all the celebrities are liable, and like the lawsuit against Crypto.com. Like, I feel like they're really gonna be a lot more strategic about ads going forward.
all right. So last non-football question. If Ashley Simpson at the Orange Bowl is a 1 and Prince at the Super Bowl is a 10, where are you putting the Usher halftime show?
I was like a solid 7. Solid 7. I think guys say you play the songs you want to hear, right? Like, know your crowd, play the hits. Don't be Billy Joel at the Grammys and playing new shit. We don't want new shit. Play Piano Man. So like for that, music
You're
selection.
you're not a Doing It All for Lena fan?
A what? Is that the name of his new song?
That's Billy. Oh, it's Billy Joel has a channel now on XM, so he's been playing the heck out of that song.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, it was okay, but like, no. So I give it a 7 because like I thought the costumes were like, eh. Based on some of the like this the other pageantry of it wasn't as good as say like L.A. where you had like Snoop Dogg and everybody coming up out of nowhere. Um, I don't know. Maybe a 7.5. I give it a 7.5.
Yeah, I liked. I liked Rihanna's show a little bit better. And I think that was last year.
I
Am I
think you're
correct?
right on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I liked Rihanna's show a little bit more. But then again, I'm probably more knowledgeable of Rihanna music than I am of Usher music. And so that's just might be my.
I mean, I knew every song he played. Like, I didn't think I knew a lot of Usher, but my wife pointed out I know a little bit more than I guess I realized I knew. He's one of those kind of guys. But I don't know. Like, it, there was nothing I could say was wrong about that show at all. Like, I can't be like, oh,
Oh,
that was
sure.
that was terrible. But like, the roller skating was silly. I don't
Now,
know where that came from.
now, when I say Ashley Simpson Orange Bowl, do you know what that reference
Oh yeah, that was
is?
the Orange Bowl. It was terrible. Terrible performance she put on out
I'm on
there.
the yeah, on the, yeah,
She
it
like because
was
I
something else.
remember. Oh god, I can't believe I'm gonna admit this on our podcast, Scott. But I used to watch the Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey reality show that they had together. Right? It was on like MTV when they were newlyweds, and
Oh,
so she was like behind the scenes, and she was like, "Oh my god, she can't hear herself. She's going out there, and she can't hear herself." And it was like they were kind of trying to like retell the story of why she was so bad that day.
no, and in fact, I remember them saying she was going to take voice lessons after that. And it's like,
She just
well,
disappeared after that.
a little late on that one. But you were mentioning, we used to watch like Rock of Love. I don't know if you remember that show.
Yeah.
So, we have some guilty pleasures in our some skeletons in our closet, as it were, for television viewing. So you don't have to feel too guilty on that.
But speaking of viewing, we did eventually sit down and watch an interesting football game, right? Because it was such a defensive slugfest for almost 3 quarters, and then it really seemed one big mistake was the tipping point in this game. It was a muff punt and a missed extra point, and next thing you know, you're heading to overtime.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like, and this almost oddly felt like the one 4 years ago, where it felt like San Francisco was in control of the game for a majority of the game, but they just never put them away. And Mahomes is going to Mahome, And that's and really you look at the game, even when you take away those two plays that you referenced, which obviously were huge keys. It's like one thing I sent to you in a text. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept of Chekhov's gun. So in theater, if they show you a gun, the gun has to be fired before the end of the play. And that's the whole, like, if they show you a gun in a movie or show you a gun in a play. So basically, the whole idea of that extra point is that missed extra point you knew was going to play a huge role in that game once it was missed. And it really wasn't missed so much as it was blocked. And then you turn right around, they showed it where, within inches, Kansas City's field goal next possession came within being blocked. So, I mean, it's just, that's the kind of game that it was.
It was a true game of inches when you look at blocks versus not blocks. You know, especially in overtime, it looked like San Francisco was going to march down, score that first touchdown. They had a 2nd and 2 where McCaffrey has to come out and Kittle hadn't come back in yet. And they get a big run from Mitchell to get down to like the 2 or 3 yard line for a first down. And you're like, okay, here we go. And then all of a sudden, Hanky on the field. And now it's 2nd and 12. And, the penalties were killers for the 49ers. But the play calling was, the third quarter play calling was terrible. Absolutely terrible. McCaffrey is a running back very similar to Barry Sanders, in my opinion, where you're going to have some 1 yard, some 2 yard runs, and it may not look like he's going to have a day, but then all of a sudden it just takes the tiniest little crease and he's gone because he made people miss at the line of scrimmage and no one's going to catch that dude at a foot race. So when you take those opportunities away from him, now all of a sudden San Francisco's offense, while it has fantastic athletes, it's predicated on running the football well and then being able to play action pass with Brock Purdy on the move, on bootlegs, and again play action passes. When you ask him to play action pass without establishing the run game in the second half, or you ask him to just come out and chuck it around, that's not how your team is built. That's not how you've put this team together. And then on top of that, Brock Purdy has a pretty decent game, but you've only targeted Greg Kittle three times. You only target Ayuk 6 times for 3 catches. For some reason in the pregame prep, you decided Jennings is going to be a huge mismatch, so we're gonna get Jennings a ton of catches. Which if that's what you thought, okay, but between the Falcons collapse, the 49ers' previous Super Bowl loss, and this one, Shanahan's play calling is highly questionable, right? Because your dad gave you the formula, and it's run the damn ball. Run the fucking ball. And you stopped running because what happened when you started running the ball again in the fourth quarter and overtime? You go right down the field.
Yeah, what kills me is that you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, McCaffrey still had over 150 yards from scrimmage. Because he had, I think, I want to say about 75 yards rushing and about 80 yards receiving.
And he busted one big one at the end in overtime there.
That big catch, yeah. But to give Kansas City some credit, I came on the show this last week and I said, if McCaffrey goes off, I don't know how you guard Ayuk, Samuel, and Kittle. I don't know how you shut them all down. They did it. I don't know how they did it, but if you look at the game, they were not gaining separation. There's a reason why Kittle was only targeted 3 times. There's a reason why Ayuk was only targeted 6 times. Samuel just wasn't himself. I don't know. I guess he was probably
banged up, man.
Yeah, he just And so Jennings, yeah, thank God for him stepping up. So I don't know how much of that is we decided that Jennings was the mismatch or Jennings was the only thing Kansas City's defense was giving you. That could have been the case as well, but I'm absolutely with you. The third quarter play calling was mystifying because you were gaining. I mean, you mentioned 1 yard, 2 yard. They were gaining 4 and 5 yards a chunk consistently all night. To me, you give me 4 or 5 yards, I'm taking them every time. every time.
Yeah, and it seemed to be like when they ran the ball consistently, they were constantly in 3rd and 3 or less. And that's where their offense is set to be. And for the third quarter, we just threw the game plan out the window. And again, if you're trying to catch them off guard or maybe you saw something, I get it. But, when you went back to the run again, you went back to moving the football. You let them get back in the game. The muff punt happens. Stuff like that happens. But that should have been a deciding point, right? You had held Patrick Mahomes to 3 points or 6 points maybe at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should have had that game put away.
Yeah, and I think what ended up happening with them, and I think this is where Shanahan is, think about it whenever you get a key turnover, particularly around midfield or in the other team's, side of the field. How many times do you see the offense saying, we're just going to go out and we're going to get them right now? And we're going to throw it,
right here.
And that's where I think Shanahan's thinking was. I'm going to make a big play. It's going to be 17-3. It's going to be lights out. When really what you should be doing is looking at, because really, even though they scored 10 points in the first half, they were moving the ball throughout the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, they had that fumble and an opening possession. I mean, I don't think if they had that fumble, they're definitely coming away with at least 3, if not 7 points in that possession.
Gashing them.
And so, that changes that game. Of course, Kansas City had a fumble, deep in San Francisco territory, later on in the game. So you could say those cancel those themselves out. But to me, you stick with what's working. If you're gashing people for 4 and 5 yards, it's not time to sit there and say, we're going to burn them deep, because you haven't burned them deep all night.
Correct. And on top of the fact, that's not how your offense is built. Your offense is built to get that deep look off a play action boot, much like Max Shaw got those deep looks on play action boots, right? That's what this offense is designed to do. And then number 2, when you run the ball effectively, you keep Patrick Mahomes on the bench and you churn that game clock away. But when you don't and you go 3 and out on 3 incomplete passes, you completely change what Mahomes' outlook is, right? He's right back out there again. Versus, wow, I haven't touched the ball in 8 minutes of game clock, which is really, sometimes 12, 13 minutes when you include a commercial or what, timeout or whatever it is. So to keep him on the bench is the best defense you can have, and it helps your defense stay fresh, especially in a situation where the best coverage linebacker that you have happened to tear his fucking Achilles heel jumping up and down on the sideline, and then the guy who comes in to replace him is targeted 9 times, gives up 9 receptions for like 150 yards. Got roasted.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this where I can't remember the starting right guard for San Francisco went out in the game.
I did.
I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the tweet?
I did, unfortunately. Like little infighting on the team over Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate. He's now a free agent. Houston, do you want a new guard? I don't know, but yeah, I mean that last play, and it's sad that it comes down to that. But obviously, if they are able to block Chris Jones on that play, maybe they score a touchdon.
Yeah, Jennings, that was the right play. Jennings could have got there if he needed just another second or two. He had a good ball on. He just threw it too early.
And because he had to, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, and so, yeah. And watching Mahomes work, I mean, you kind of knew, about midway through that drive how that whole thing was going to turn out.
I mean, they had him 4th and 1.
Yeah, they had him once they converted. Once they converted on that 4th and then that 3rd down after that, that 3rd and 10, they converted on that. After that, I'm like, okay, we know how this is going to turn out.
And again, I think talking about the lack of preparation, the 49ers didn't have come out and said they didn't know the overtime rules, which is completely unforgivable because with all due respect, you win the toss, you go second. You go second. You know what you need to do because think about it this way. The Chiefs probably don't go for it on 4th down that deep in their own territory if they have the ball first, right? They'll punt it, hope to get a stop, and try and get the ball back themselves on defense. But where they were, 4th and 1 at their own 25-yard line, down 3, and they have to score, they're going to go for it. So by not knowing just the rules of the game, they put themselves in a poor situation.
Yeah, I feel like, and obviously too, if they score the touchdown, you defend a lot differently.
Absolutely.
Because when it's 3rd and 10, they got to go for it on 4th down. You're not playing the game like, well, I'm just going to let them gain 6 or 7 yards and tackle them short. You're going to make sure you're going to pin them back. You're going to be a little bit more, you're going to play differently. And I just feel, obviously, the penalty, that holding penalty didn't end up hurting them because they ended up getting the 1st down, on the next play
On a
on a,
penalty.
terrific, pass to the fullback.
Oh, that one. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and terrific, catch, and one of those where, if it had been in regulation, I'm sure that, Kansas City would have challenged that, and maybe it gets overturned, but, you don't get any challenges in overtime. So that one, probably benefited the 49ers. I think, I'm with you. I think it was a difficult coaching game, and hopefully we learn something from that. Hopefully he comes back. I think that Brock Purdy's only going to get better. He's got 2 more years on that rookie deal, so you've got 2 more years of Prime being able to load up that roster as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And I don't see him as a guy who's going to go out there and try and get a 40 or 50 million dollar deal. I think he understands that he is successful because he has a lot of weapons on his team, and I'm not taking away from his talent or his skill or anything like that. But if you are a guy who gets to throw to that many good wide receivers, you probably want to keep it that way. And then seeing as he makes the league minimum right now, he might be happy at $15 million. Or, he could look at it from the Arian Foster perspective of, you got me for some cheap years, fuck you, now you're going to pay me. So, we'll see. But, that was A.J. Boye's perspective when he was in Houston too, right? You got cheap years out of me, now I'm going to get my bag. I don't know if Purdy is that kind of guy. Doesn't seem like it from everything that I've seen of the 49ers media that my wife sends me on a pretty regular basis. But we'll see, because I do think the Niners will be back. I think they'll be right back there next year. They have a lot of these guys already wrapped up for the long term. This is their team. They might lose a piece or two on defense or on offense, whether it be Chase Young, who I don't believe they signed long term after trading for,
No,
and
no.
and Ayuk is got his 5th-year option picked up, but nothing after that. So there's a chance that they might trade him and maybe try and get a little draft capital back that they've given up so much to put this team together. I don't know. We'll see. But if he does stay, then you've got a receiving core that's completely intact. You've got young running back. I'm sorry, not a young running back, but a star running back. You've got a good tight end, and you've got a damn good defense. The biggest loss for the 49ers every year seems to come from their coaching staff when one of those guys gets pilfered. But this year, that wasn't really the case. So now you seem to have everybody coming back and a chance to run it back, hopefully with maybe a little bit better health, which is what they seem to say every year because they get an injury bug bad, something going on there.
Yeah, Young is a free agent, because he's been linked. Some people have mentioned him with Houston. Ayuk, I think they've talked extension. We'll just have to see, how that ends up transpiring. And the thing is, you mentioned Mitchell earlier. Nice backup running back to have there. I'd love, he'd look a whole lot better than Damian Pierce would, in Houston as a backup running back. So, I mean, that's a team that has a whole lot of talent. They might lose Young. They might use a lineman or two, but really, I think all the principals are going to be back. And then, on top of that, if you look at that conference, the Cowboys, have a balloon payment due on quite a few guys. And so I don't know how, they keep talking about we're going to be all in. I don't know how you add to that roster when you've got, 3 guys that are probably due to be the highest paid player at their position. And then, of course, you've got the Lions, who I don't know if you consider them an up and coming team or a Cinderella team. The Packers are probably up and coming, but who knows what's going to happen with them. The Eagles, who kind of knows what's going to happen to them. They got two new coordinators. So, who knows? The path for the 49ers right now in February seems pretty clear. Of course, we've got free agency coming. We've got the draft. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean it's never guaranteed. You definitely have to go out and play the football games, but they've got a great roster, and there are a lot more question marks around the league than there are in San Francisco. I think Detroit's most likely going to be a good football team again next year. I think the Packers will probably be pretty good too. They have the injury bug pretty bad, but the Eagles are most likely losing a center, as you said, two new coordinators. Um, what is Jalen Hurts' health like at this point when you've run him into the ground for 2 straight years? A lot of question marks there. The Buccaneers are doubling down most likely with Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, I think the 49ers are in a great position. I don't think you can ever really, with a straight face, sit there and tell me this is going to be the Cowboys' year and I'm going to not laugh at you or, whatever you want to say, because it's not. Like, I'm sorry. It's not. So yeah, I do feel like the Niners are in a good spot. I think you might play the Chiefs again next year. Who knows? Unless CJ Stroud can put something magical together, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, the only thing on the Chiefs end is I know Chris Jones is a free agent, and so you lose, a marquee defensive player. That defense I think carried them at times this year,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
definitely played a big role in the Super Bowl victory. So you take Chris Jones out of that defense, who knows? And do they let Chris Jones go and maybe try to get some more, weapons around Mahomes? That's a possibility, but I think their path forward is a little bit more difficult than the 49ers path.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely more question marks with that team as Travis Kelsey is another year older. Patrick Mahomes is another year older. Will Andy Reid be retiring in the offseason? As you mentioned, Chris Jones is leaving. But at the end of the day, they have two fantastic cornerbacks who can do everything that you could ever ask for on that football team. You and I both know Justin Reed is a fantastic safety.
Mhm.
And you've got pretty decent, pretty decent edge players too. Karloftis is a real nice football player. And then the guy they drafted from Kansas State in the first round last year was pretty good too. So they're going to have another first round pick. It'll be the last pick of the round, but we'll see what they do with it. At some point, when you look at their wide receivers, Rice actually came on pretty well late in the year once him and Mahomes got on the same page. Um, Maybe there's a chance they add a guy in the draft if someone falls, or um, you know what would be real dangerous if they could get the next heir apparent to Travis Kelsey, and now all of a sudden you can run two tight end sets with what's the kid from Georgia, Brock Bowers, something like that would be just sick. But we'll see what they do. The Chiefs have never been afraid to make a move to make themselves better. Whether it be a trade up in the draft to go get Mahomes, whether it be the owner of the Chiefs, flying to Philadelphia to meet Andy Reid at the airport before he has a chance to even fly to Arizona to meet with the Cardinals to possibly become their coach. They're willing to do what they got to do. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just gotta tip your cap and hope that your football team can replicate some of that success.
All right, so letting you drive the ship here, Tim. Where are we headed to next?
Well, we're gonna talk about a team that was unwilling to do everything, unwilling to risk anything, and unwilling to make a move. That's the Houston Rockets, Scott, who had a very quiet NBA trade deadline day, did absolutely nothing. Now they made a move a week before, but you and I talked back and forth about it. Really, really frustrating because this is a team that has the potential to play in that, play in game. And because we have a pick swap situation, there is no negative outcome from not doing that, right? You get your young players some taste of meaningful basketball down the stretch. And now, without that move, without Fred Van Vliet, you're now asking Amen Thompson to carry the load, which, okay, he's a rookie. It's going to be great for him for development. But at the same time, wouldn't it be great to have 20 minutes in the playoff game? Wouldn't it be great for him to get the taste of that? Wouldn't it be great to have a guy like Patrick Beverly, former Rocket, who was moved at the deadline for peanuts, to come in? But instead, you gave up 3 first-round picks, all of your fucking ammo, to go get Steven Adams, and it's only going to be for 1 year because he has only 1 year left on his contract and he's not playing this year. So you gave up 3 second-round picks for that. You had an offer, I think, what was it, for 2 second-round picks for Jayshawn Tate? Okay, you turned that down. Why? Tate is now a negative on this basketball team. There was a time where it looked like he might be the next PJ Tucker. Hey, we were wrong. Whatever injury that he had that cost him his season last year, it messed him up because he can't shoot and he can't defend at the rate and he's not passing the way that he used to pass. If you could have got 2 first-round picks for Jason Tate, you should have taken that and ran to the fucking bank all day. And then you could have turned those 2 second-round picks into Patrick Beverly. And then you would have had some veteran point guard backup play for your rookie so that way you can make a push and still let him develop and let him learn the playoff environment as well. Just a big swing and a miss by Raphael Stone.
Yeah, I was thinking about making him my scumbag this week. He was my scumbag until Sunday when something happened. And we'll get to that later on in the show. But what I always preface this by saying is that you never know what those conversations are like. Say this with the Astros all the time because, there have been trade deadlines. 2017 was a prime example. Dallas Keuchel came out and lambasted Jeff Luhnow for not making a deal at the July deadline. And, of course, we picked up Verlander at the August deadline and all was forgiven. But you never know what those conversations are like. Supposedly, we had a deal for Zach Britton at that July deadline, 2017, and the Baltimore owner, Angelos, ixnay it. Supposedly in 2018, we had a deal for Bryce Harper.
I think it was 19. I think that was 19, but that would have been sick.
It was 18. I think it was 18 because he was a free agent.
Okay, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That would have been sick, man.
And offense was the thing. Our position players were beaten up. Once we got to the Boston series, nobody was healthy. So a healthy Bryce Harper in the middle of that lineup, who knows? Maybe that thing turns out differently. Maybe we go back to another World Series. You never know. But the Washington owner is the one that turned that trade down. So we don't necessarily know what conversations were had or were not had. But this team, I don't know if they're good enough to make it into the play-in tournament. I don't know if Patrick Beverly would have been the difference between them getting into the play-in tournament. We see now that Kyle Lowry was bought out and that he's going to be going to Philadelphia. He's not going to be coming. No, and so I guess, buyout players don't want to come to Houston because Houston's likely not going to be a playoff team. And I understand that. But what you want is this team playing meaningful games in April. That's what you want. And maybe we shouldn't have beaten the Knicks last night. If you're looking at how the game was called, it's nice to be on the other end of a bad call like that, for a change. But let's say we lose that game. Right now, we're 3 games out of the play-in tournament. Do you see this team making up 3 games?
No.
Do you see the team coming close to making up 3 games?
Oh, not unless Fred VanVleet was completely misdiagnosed and he's back next week, right? Because I enjoy watching the effort that Thompson gives, right? Like, the guy plays his balls off. Absolutely plays his balls off. The effort is there. The hustle is there. The defense has been better, right? Like, I think he has been better. He can't fucking shoot. He can't shoot at all. It is worse than Russell Westbrook. And his brother can't fucking shoot either. We saw that the other night when they matched up against each other. But there is not one jump shot between one of these twins. Now, again, he's a great athlete, can get to the rim, can create, can rebound. But you know what? Fred VanVleet, at some point, in games just decides, like, I'm going to knock down a couple threes here. I'm going to get past the screen. I got to look. Boom. I got to look. Boom. And you have to respect that. And because you have to respect that, then you come up. Then he, boom, pocket passed on Sengun. Now Sengun's in a mismatch in the paint. You don't have to respect that anymore. There is no jump shot to respect with Thompson at this point. And he's not just going to magically put on Michael Jordan's shoes like Bow Wow did and start nailing jumpers, right? Like, that's not going to happen. This isn't a Disney movie. He's a bad jump shooter, and he's going to be a bad jump shooter until he spends 100 hours a week in the gym over the offseason.
Yeah, and I was going to mention the rebounding. It's nice to see him, contribute, and I think that's one of the things where Udoka, I think, has been a really great coach, as I think he's convinced these guys you can contribute, and maybe he's getting into getting through to Jalen Green. You can contribute something, and so Emma Thompson's contributing something. But one of the things I want to brag as a numbers guy, I love what Space City is doing. And I love, like, Craig Ackerman and who's it? Hollins is his color guy. Before Fred VanVleet was injured, they mentioned the fact effective shooting percentage. It's on Basketball Reference. You can look it up. Every player has one. Every team has one. You know how many teams there are in the NBA, Tim?
30.
We are 26th in effective shooting percentage.
Yeah, we're not a good shooting team.
That's the ball game. And I will say this, under Udoka, we are a whole lot better defensively than what we were under Silas. With Fred VanVleet at point, we're committing far fewer turnovers than what we used to. Obviously, that's no longer the case when he's out. But if you can't shoot, I mean, you got to play 1990s New York Knicks level defense in order to get past that. And I swear, I think Anthony Mason was carrying around like a caveman club and just clubbing people with it back then. I mean, I think that's what the game was like back in the 90s. This team,
you can only go so far. You can only go so far as a defensive team in today's basketball. Like, I am a giant UH fan. I don't know if we could talk a ton about it on this podcast, but I am. I'm a huge UH fan. And UH probably plays the best defense in the country. They're one of the best rebounding teams in the country. But the reason they have not won a national championship yet is because they have never been a great jump shooting team. Every single tournament, they go cold because they just don't have enough shooters. You can't win if you don't have shooters in today's NBA. That's just how the game is built. There's no way to win in this game if you cannot jump shoot the basketball. That used to be a bad thing, right? They used to say, like, oh, jump shooting teams eventually go cold. Well, they don't anymore. We're in a world where, like, if you're a bad jump shooting team, you're a bad basketball team. If you can't shoot the rock, you're done.
Well, and if you fast forward to the days, because it's not going to be this year, but eventually this is going to be a playoff team. Any coach worth anything in a playoff series can figure out how to take away one or two guys. They can design their defense, like if a coach wants to, they could take Sengun out of the game. Now, what that does is it opens up for somebody else. But if that guy can't knock down an open look, then it doesn't matter.
And that's why Westbrook was such a liability, right? Because you can take away whoever you wanted and leave Russell Westbrook wide open, and he can't hit shit. Well, now you have the same problem with Thompson. You can take away Sengun by doubling him every time he touches the ball, and then Thompson is not going to hit a three. He's not going to make you pay for leaving him wide the fuck open.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, though, is that when you get, Udoka can do all the coaching he wants. But it's just like with U of H in the tournament. Once you get into the tournament, those coaches all can coach. So if U of H has one or two good shooters, they can design a defense to take one of those two shooters out. So now you need a third and a fourth one that can drain something. And you look at this team, Jalen Green, very streaky. There's games where he looks like he can, fill it in from 30. And then there's some games where, he can't fill it in for 15. You look at, Jabari Smith, same way. He can knock down threes every now and then, but then there's some games where he can't buy a bucket. You look at with Brooks, same kind of thing. Van Vliet, I think, is a little bit more consistent, but of course, he's not out there right now.
No,
So,
I think you pretty much get a floor line of 35% a night from Van Fleet, right? Where some of those other guys, it's three of 15 sometimes.
yeah, and so really, you don't have if none of those guys are hot, you just don't have a shot, and that's and I don't know that Patrick Beverly changes that fundamentally that much. I mean,
Patrick Beverly will hit an open three. That's the
he's
difference between
more
Thompson and. But you can run the offense the way it's designed with Beverly, and Patrick Beverly will catch and shoot an open three when you double Sengun in the paint and he kicks it back out. Now, if you kick it back out to Thompson, now Thompson's going to drive into an already congested paint and try and kick it back out again to somebody else for an open look, or he's going to try and drive, draw a foul, or get to the rim, and again, an already congested paint because there's double teaming Sengun down there.
right, but I don't know if Beverly. I haven't looked at his numbers. He's not a great 3-point shooter.
He's like a
I
38
think
to 40% 3-point shooter.
I think at this point in his career, though, he is a tremendous perimeter defender,
Always has been.
um, and always has been. And I think he's a guy that it will frustrate the hell out of whoever is the point guard on the other side, and we've seen that happen. I mean, I feel like Milwaukee's a good place for him because they've already got Damian Lillard, so they don't need him to play large minutes. He's a guy that could come off the bench and can frustrate the hell out of another team's point guard for 10 or 15 minutes a night. But
So he's only shooting
like you,
32% from three this year, but for his career, he's a 37% 3-point shooter.
but 32 is better than what Thompson's doing.
Correct. And since he got to
And
Milwaukee in 2 games there, he's shooting 60%.
yeah, so he's a guy that would have at least been a threat. He's not a guy. He's not a Steph Curry.
Oh,
I mean, there's only one of those guys. But and yeah, for a second round pick, and I'm with you. I don't know what Jashane Tate's purpose is on this team. Even if he's playing well, you just look at the minutes. He's just not playing.
yeah.
And so, what are you doing?
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. Absolutely with you. Couldn't agree more. Alrighty. Well, I think that's going to do it for the dead NBA trade deadline. Let's move it over to something a little more exciting. One of the nicest things about the Super Bowl ending is that means baseball's starting. Pitchers and catchers reported today to sunny Florida. The Astros have been busy with extensions, offering or at least mentioning that they're going to offer to Bregman, to Tucker. Scott, who's next? Who's the guy who's getting that next extension for the Houston Astros?
So I did a couple of articles on my Substack for those of y'all that want to check it out. And what I did is I played agent. And so I crunched the numbers and I looked at comparable players, both at third base and in right field for Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, respectively. Now with Tucker, I took a little bit of liberties where I included some left fielders, some center fielders. I include outfielders. And basically arrived at a number for both guys. So Alex Bregman, where I came in at, is 29 million average annual value. So here's the question. Is that number palatable to you? And if it is, for how many years?
Yeah, I'd give him, I think, the same deal that they maybe rumored Correa was offered, which is like 6,180. I would go that if he doesn't take it. Damn. But at least then you get the AAV you want. You get to stay in Houston, which from everything I understand, you enjoy being here, and we continue to chase titles for both he and Altuve's entire career. I at least think if he was smart, he could time it to end with Altuve.
Yeah, and I think when I crunched Altuve's numbers, his contract is far below market value.
Absolutely.
And his average, the average annual value for win per win is, and this is what I was looking at, ended up being about 5.5 million per win, which, the industry standard is somewhere around 7 or 8 million per win. So, I mean, he really, and so I think if people are going to expect Alex Bregman to make a similar deal, I think they're going to end up being disappointed, because that's just a once in a lifetime. However, what I was going to point out though is if you schedule this right, you could get both, because you could get Bregman done now, and then after next year, Presley clears off, JV clears off, maybe.
And if he doesn't, that's a
Framber,
good thing, right? Because it meant he had a good year.
yeah, Fromber maybe clears off, but by the time a Tucker deal would kick in, which would be the 26th season, Verlander's gone, Presley's gone, Abreu's gone, and Framber's probably gone. So you could conceivably pull in, both of those guys. With Tucker, I think I ended up being somewhere between 35 and 40 million average annual value. And what I did is that I ended up graduating the deal so that if you signed a 10-year contract, the average annual value was lower. And if you signed like a 6-year or 7-year deal, that cranked it up a bit. So I think I want to say that ended up maybe about 30 million on the low end and maybe 35, 36 million on the upper end.
Yeah, I, it's crazy to think that he's going to be that expensive, but we know he is, right? He plays an elite level defense. He's got great plate discipline, runs well, hits well, throws well, and he's still young because we drafted him straight out of high school. So it's going to be expensive. I'd like to get it done. I don't want to go to $40 million a year, but if you could get him, and again, he's going to want that 10-year deal, Scott, and Crane has shown he doesn't want to do that, and I don't mind that anymore. Like I was pissed when Cray left. I was pissed when Springer left. I was pissed when Cole left. But at the end of the day, like we have remained competitive because Jim Crane has had a game plan and he has stuck to it, and that game plan has worked. I just don't want to see it come to an end yet. Maybe that's what it is. It's just like you don't know you're in the good times till they're over. But at the same time, like I'm loving it. I don't want it to end. I like being a team that everybody hates, and I want to keep winning. And I just wish there was a way to not pay everybody $35 million, but it just means that you're really good at scouting and developing talent when all your homegrown talent has to get paid.
Yeah, I don't. The difficulty with both of those guys, with Bregman and Tucker, is I don't know. With Altuve, we know where this ends. This ends with him going to Cooperstown. We know exactly where this ends. We don't know whether that's with 3,000 or more hits. We don't know that yet, obviously. But with Tucker and Bregman, we don't know where the future is with them. But just to give you an idea, and what I ended up doing was Springer was one of my comps. Springer signed 6 years, $150 million. That's 25 million a year.
I mean, I'd give Tucker that deal in a heartbeat and wouldn't look back about it, but
But
he won't sign that.
but see, here's the thing, and what I did was I included a 5% bump in inflation per year, because he signed that deal. Springer signed that deal in 2021. That same contract, you're going to have to bump it up 15% for Springer. Now, Springer was older because, the Astros kept pushing his clock back. So do you think, I mean, if we look at this, as dispassionately as we possibly can, where would you put Tucker in comparison with Springer? A similar age.
I honestly, without trying to be a homer or whatever, I honestly think Tucker is a more valuable baseball player than George Springer. I think George Springer is is phenomenal. He's a great clubhouse guy, but he's always had injury issues. He is not the best defender. I think you had to kind of move him to right field at times, or late in the game where Tucker is a Gold Glove defender, and it makes it look more smoother. Where like Springer plays violently, like everything he does is violent, where Tucker's just smoother. I don't think it's a lot, but I think at the same age, Tucker is a better baseball player and has a longer career outlook and ages better than George Springer does.
Okay, so well, that's not what I want to do. So looking at if George Springer signs his deal today with that 5% bump per year, he is just a shade under 29 million average annual value. So if you think Kyle Tucker is a better baseball player, which I agree, so that means he's at least 30 million. At least.
Yeah, I think his is, if you could go in an ideal world, Scott, I think it's for Bregman, it's 6 at 180, and this is ideal world, 6 at 180, and then oh god, I have to do math. 6 times 35. Add another,
210.
huh?
210.
Yeah,
That's
okay, so
210.
6 at 210 for Tucker would be how I do that. I don't know how you go to Bregman and say I'm paying Tucker more than you, other than the fact that just like, hey man, I think he's got a longer career. He's still going to be in his prime in 6 years, and you're not.
Well, and I think what you do is I would go longer. And I think I would try to keep it as close to that 30 average annual value as possible. But maybe you go 10-300.
I
And
would.
and
I personally would, but
um,
Jim Crane has shown he does not do 10-year
yeah,
deals.
I agree. But
I'd
see,
go
the
eight
thing
two
is,
forty.
because the thing is with that is what you're doing is that number one, when you knock that average annual value down, you're
Luxury tax,
basically
baby.
well, you're well, not even luxury tax. I mean that's just I
Maybe
mean
we could do
that's
some
that's
like deferred money bullshit.
that's pretend money. To me, what you're doing is you're paying off those last 2 or 3 seasons that you know are going to be unproductive. And when you sign a 10-year contract, when you sign a guy to a 10-year contract, it's like when the Phillies signed Bryce Harper to, what was it, like 12 or 13 years? You know he's going to be dog shit at the end of that contract. You know it. But what you're doing is you're figuring that he's going to be so valuable on the front end that that's going to end up paying for the back end. And so if you're signing Tucker to an 8-year contract, let's just say, you know that odds are pretty good that he'll be decent but not great by the end of that contract. So you're hoping those first 5 or 6 years more than pay for the last 2 or 3 years when things are not. And somebody actually made a great analogy with the Jose Abreu deal that they thought was so bad about it is that basically we're paying for the last 3 years of a 10-year contract for Jose Abreu. Is that that's the level of player you're getting, where you didn't get to enjoy the front end. In this case, you're getting to enjoy the front end. I mean, he's going to be a 30-30 guy for another probably 2 or 3 seasons at least. So let's go ahead
He's
and enjoy
27
it.
right now, so let's say I don't know, 32, 33. You probably still run well at that age. Um, it's the level of care that I don't run well, but the level of care that these guys have, 32, 33. I expect him to still be at least be a 30-25 or 30-20 guy. Still play elite defense, so I think you get six solid years out of him.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he could be 35 at the end of it. That's not in baseball. You can still swing the stick at 35, and you can still play a quality right field at 35 years old. Injuries and everything aside. So if you could get him for 8, I'd do it. But again,
You
the 10-year deal is the thing now. Guys want 10. The Astros have found some guys who are willing to prioritize winning, but it seems like a majority of the people not named Lance McCullers and Justin Verlander have been our South American or Dominican or Caribbean players who are willing to sacrifice arbitration years to get paid now, lately. Bregman did it early in the career. Altuve did it early in the career. But again, he's another one of those South American guys who sacrificed arbitration years to get paid. We'll see if Tucker wants to buy into winning, right? Like at some point, do you want to go make a crap ton of money to play for the Minnesota Twins? Do you want to make a crap ton of money to be the only star in town for the new Las Vegas A's? Or do you want to go freeze your crap and tail off in Toronto? Or do you want to stay in Houston? And do you want to compete for World Series titles and make $30 million a year for 8 years instead of 10?
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned Correa and Springer, and I think their injury histories definitely played a huge role in the decision not to go long term with them. And that's something that I will say about Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker. Bregman's had some bumps and bruises here where he's missed some games, but neither of them have had any major injuries to this point in their career,
Yeah,
whereas both Correa and Springer had major injuries. And so
absolutely.
that has to make a huge difference in whether or not you go long term with those guys. And I feel like at least with those two, I feel confident that they'll show up to the ballpark almost every day. I don't know how good they'll be by the end of their contracts, but at least they'll be there playing baseball.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think when you look at, down the road, um, when Abreu comes off the books, it's not like we have some hot shot first base prospect either, right? Like you could very easily convince me that Kyle Tucker is going to move to first base late in his career, much like a Lance Berkman did, right? If he's 34 years old and playing first base and still productive, cool. I'm fine with that, right? Like there's nothing wrong with a position change late in your life to keep you on the field, to keep you productive. And if you're getting power at the first base position for $30 million a year, 6 years from now, that seems like a good investment too. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. I mean, Alex Rodriguez moved to third. Jeff Kent moved to first. Mike Piazza moved to first. Guys find a way to extend their career when they can still swing the stick, right?
Yeah. Do you want your diminutive second baseman playing first base?
No, I don't want
Maybe.
Jose Altuve. I don't think his defense will fall off that far because I mean, yes, he's a gold glover, but like that was like a popularity contest gold glove, if we're being completely honest. Like,
He was a minus 14 last year.
yeah, he's not great. So
That's
like
that,
how much
that-
farther is it gonna fall off, Scott?
yeah, that's true.
I mean,
So
like I never thought Biggio was a great defensive second baseman. He was good, but like he was heads and tails better than Altuve. And I love Altuve, and I would take Altuve on my team over Craig Biggio as my starting second baseman every time. Because like if I have to win a game, I want Altuve in the lineup. Period. I might find a way to sneak Biggio behind the plate or something like that, but like I want Altuve playing second base.
yeah. So yeah, I'm with you.
But let's
Um,
let's real quickly. We talked about the extensions. Let's talk about over under, Scott, because I think you put some numbers together, some predictions for this Astros team, and let's run through them. Let's talk who, or at least who could overperform this season based on what the metrics say they will be, and who do you think's gonna maybe not hit that number?
yeah, and so and full disclosure, if Tim is flashing these numbers here on the screen, they came from
I don't have the
Fangraphs.
numbers. I don't have the numbers on
Uh,
the screen.
the numbers I came up with are from Fangraphs. I did not come up dream them up out of my head. But what I seem to remember was Yanir Diaz. I think was around 260 with 20 bombs. Was the over under? So we'll start with him. Where are you going with him? Are you going over that or are you going under that?
I think the bombs are accurate. I think he'll hit below 260. I think he's probably going to hit 250 next year. I think he's going to have some struggles with the strikeouts. Um, but I do think he'll have enough pop. And again, 250 is unbelievably better than Martin Maldonado. So I do think no matter what happens there, it'll be an improvement. But I do think 20 homers is probably about accurate.
Yeah, the biggest problem I have is like there are people out there who will go nuts and look at what he did last year and assume a full season and go like he's going to hit 32 home runs.
No.
Now look around baseball. How many catchers, full-time catchers, not DHs who we could call a catcher. How many catchers hit 30 home runs last year?
I don't think any. Maybe Salvi in previous years has done it, but it's
Yeah,
just
so
hard to
not,
do.
not last year.
It's
Yeah,
hard to
not
do.
last year.
Your knees take it's an exhausting position. Like yes, he came out and he swung the stick well, but also like he wasn't exposed last year. He was a high strikeout guy for sure, but when you play 130 games, there's a lot of tape on you, and pitchers can figure out how to get you out. So he's going to be exposed in that level this year. So I do think there's going to be a lot more cat and mouse than there was last year because he was still so fresh on the scene, wasn't used that much, and was able to ambush a lot of pitchers early on in the season.
Yeah, my hope for him is that he has a similar progression in patience that Jeremy Pena has had. I mean, Jeremy Pena is not going to make anybody, think he's Juan Soto. But from year one to year two, he saw a nice uptick in patience in his walks. I'd like to see that kind of progression from Diaz. And I think if you get that kind of progression, it'll be a successful year. But I'm with you. I think 250 with 20 bombs is about right.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a nice year. I really do. But at the end of the day, you can't expect a rookie with the pressure of handling the pitching staff on top of everything else he's going to be doing at the plate. He's handling the staff. That is a whole new level of pressure in and of itself. And you got to be at the plate, and your body's going to take a beating at some point, and right. So at some point, something's going to regress a little bit, and to me, it's just going to be that batting average. I don't think he's going to have the same number of singles or base hits. I think the power is still going to be there. His swing is one that's going to generate pop, but he's going to strike out more. It is what it is. You give this guy more bats, the strikeouts are going to go up.
In terms of if I were to go with my pick to overachieve, and this is based purely on projections, right? My pick is actually going to be Jose Abreu. Because I think what happened last year is he had an undisclosed back condition that really plagued him all the way through August. And then he took a few days off, got a cortisone shot, and you saw what happened in late August and September. I mean, he had over 20 RBIs in September. He ended up with 90 RBIs on the season, which seems ridiculous given, what he was doing in the first half, where I don't think he hit a home run until June. I don't think he's going to go nuts. I see him around 20 home runs. But I see him as a guy that could come close to 100 RBIs with the way he kind of plays. He doesn't draw that many walks. He's a guy that seems to be proficient at getting a runner in from third base in less than 2 outs. So, I mean, I see him as being, kind of cannibalizing those RBI opportunities and making it pretty close to 100 RBIs on the season.
Couldn't agree with you more. I definitely think Abreu's in for a big bounce back year. I don't think he's going to hit 335 homers, but I do think you could see close to 275. I think you could see 20 homers, and I think you could see an OPS around 780. Right? I think that would be something you and I both would love to see out of Jose Abreu. I think a guy who's going to overperform this year is Chaz. I really think that, again, we talked about it when we mentioned who we should look at extending early in their arbitration process. The reason I look at Chaz is, again, he's gotten better every year. Chaz had his first taste of big league baseball, got beat out for playing time from Jake Myers until Myers gets hurt. He's losing playing time to Jose Siri. What does he do? He goes off season. He grinds his ass off. He comes back. He's still losing playing time to Jose Siri. What does he do? He outplays him to the point where they have to trade Jose Siri away. So Dusty Baker is forced to play Chas McCormick. He grabs a hold of that job and is clutch down the stretch. What does he do the next offseason? he finds a way to pull the baseball, because Chaz has always been someone who struggled with that inside pitch. He was so much better with heat away because the way he set up and strode, or his stride was set up, would be the better way to say that, right? So now this year, Chaz is able to pull the baseball. And what do you see? Higher average, more homers, better OPS than he's ever had in his entire life. So I see a progression in Chas McCormick that, to me, is a guy who's found a way to identify what his weakness is at the plate, especially every single offseason, and attack it and come back better and ready to play the next year. So to me, that is why I think Chas McCormick could be set for a fantastic 2024.
So one of the things I want to warn people about is that progression is never a straight line. And the player that I would use to illustrate that last year is Jeremy Pena. To me, Jeremy Pena was a better hitter last year.
Absolutely.
Than he was during his rookie year. But he hit fewer home runs. So people look at that and go like, he wasn't as good.
But he wasn't trying to hit as many home runs either. He focused on plate discipline. He focused on lowering the strikeouts and upping the walks and getting higher contact instead of just going up there and ripping at it.
Absolutely. And so when you look at Chas McCormick, I think what you're going to see is that you're going to see, especially for those of y'all that are into looking at sites like Fangraphs, the StatCast numbers last year were a lot lower than what he produced. And so when you look at the projections are based largely on those StatCast numbers. I think I'm with Tim. I think he grinds out. I think he gets better, but I think he gets better from those StatCast numbers. So he may not produce last year's numbers, but he'll still be a better hitter than he was last year.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to people. He might be around an 800 OPS instead of an 850 OPS. But that's still a better hitter than he was in 2023.
Yeah, I think he cuts down the Ks. I really think he cuts down the K rate this year. Again, if he's looked at every one of his weaknesses every year and gone and attacked it, I think he struck out a lot last year. He added a lot of things to the game, but he struck out a lot. That might be something that he has identified, and we'll see what happens in spring training. It'll
be interesting if he's in left field. I don't know what an impact this has on his offensive game. Because it's kind of when you're playing a difficult defensive position, like you mentioned with Diaz and catcher, you almost liken it to the NBA where these guys are two-way players. And, when another guy makes you defend and work hard on the defensive end, that it's harder to score on the offensive end. And if you're running your ass off in center field, do your legs get tired over a full season versus when you're in left field with the Crawford boxes, you're not doing nearly as much running. Does that make him better offensively? Particularly maybe, does he swipe a few more bags with fresher legs? That could be an interesting thing to look at.
The one thing I'd actually be concerned about is maybe even the opposite of that, Scott, is I'd be a little concerned of his mental or his mindset. Does he feel like he needs to hit for more power if he's a left fielder than if he's a center fielder? I don't know if he's never said anything otherwise, but traditionally in baseball, your corner outfielders are your power guys, and your center fielder is not expected to hit as many homers. I'd be worried that he thinks okay, I'm the left fielder now, I can bulk up, I don't need to play center field, I can go after a few more pitches, and I would not want that for him. I don't want him to try and be a power hitter. I want him to be a complete hitter who hits for power.
So if I go on to the negative end, and I hate to say negative, but some of those Fangraphs projections were very bullish on Jake Myers.
I agree.
Like one of them was like a 700 OPS, and I'm like, what? About I don't know. And my hope is for him. Actually, you mentioned it at a previous. I don't know if it was on this podcast or if it was the last iteration on the Snap Hook, but I think you made a comparison to Drake Marisnik, which I think is actually a very apt comparison for him. Because, watching Jake Marisnik play center field and run the bases was a joy. Watching him in the batter's box when he connected on one was a joy. Watching him in the batter's box on most occasions was cringeworthy. Overall, Jake Marisnick, if he played every day, was a 2 or 3 win baseball player, which is where Jake Myers is at. If you play Jake Myers in center field on a regular basis, he might be worth 2 wins defensively by itself. But offensively, I just don't see it.
And based on a lot of these predictions, Scott, I don't see a lot of guys besides Myers that really are going to perform below the numbers, right? Just on the ones you sent me, right? I think Yiner might be one that goes under. Abreu, I think, goes over. Altuve goes over. Bregman goes over. Pena, I think, goes over. McCormick goes over. Myers goes under. I think Tucker is probably right at accurate, as is Jordan. So, I don't know. Like, I think Altuve is a better than a 280 hitter with 24 homers. I think he could probably beat that. I think Bregman is better than 265. I definitely think that because he's a notorious slow starter, but I don't know. He ends up about 275, 280 every year when he's healthy. So we'll see. We'll absolutely see. But I think even if everybody comes out at these numbers, this is a pretty good offensive ball club.
Yeah. Pena probably, in my mind, might go under on the homers because I think they had him
15
around
could be
17.
accurate.
17, I think some of them had him around 17 or 18, which seems a little bit aggressive.
I think 15 is a pretty good number for him. If I got 15 pokes
15,
out of him, I'm very. If I got these exact numbers from Pena, 260, 15 homers, 70 RBIs, and he scored 75 runs, I'm jumping for joy because his defense is fantastic, and those are the kind of offensive numbers that you can hit him several different spots in the lineup, and he's not going to hurt you.
I think the big key with this offense is they have got to use bubble wrap, styrofoam. I don't know, the little bubbly paper, put it around Jordan and keep him in a chamber, maybe load some food under the door. You got to find some way to get that guy in 150 games.
Yep. That's the big deal.
Because he hasn't been able to do it.
No,
he hasn't been able. Well, and even when he's played, he's had those problems with his hands every now and then.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, would you say that he's maybe been at 70 or 80 games 100% every year?
Probably.
I mean, that seems about right. I mean, and still producing, close to 30 bombs. I mean, he's absolutely, I don't know, pound for pound, maybe Aaron Judge, maybe, one or two other guys might be on that level of must-watch TV. But when Yordan Alvarez is at the plate, it's much-watch television.
Absolutely.
Because you never know what's going to happen. And I can only think of maybe a handful of players around the league that I would put, Ohtani definitely. I think Judge definitely. But I can't think of too many other guys that are much-watch television.
Absolutely correct. If he played a healthy season, I think he hits 50, 60 homers. He just has never been healthy for an entire season. You mentioned the hand injuries. He fights through things. He's one of the best pure hitters in baseball, and he's just got easy pop, easy power. Like, it's effortless for him. He doesn't have to swing hard to hit the ball far, and that makes it really, really tough on opposing pitchers. But, Scott, I think we're going to start pivoting towards some of our favorite segments this week. You got a tip of the cap for us?
Actually, I'll go a tip of the cap, to the producers of the Super Bowl. I think it was a terrific show all the way around. I don't know if you saw the numbers, but they said the peak 210 million viewers on all the different platforms. But I think the NFL has done a terrific job. They include Nickelodeon, for some more of the kids angle. I think there have been better shows than Usher, but I think Usher put on a really good show. And I think it was a well officiated game. I don't have any real complaints about how the game was officiated. I think both teams showed up, played really well. Obviously we mentioned a couple of things, the bounces that went against the 49ers that, probably, cost them that game. But, that's every football game. Every team can point to a bounce here and there that goes against them, especially when they lose. So I applaud the NFL for an absolutely, terrific show all the way around.
I'm gonna give a tip of the cap. It's gonna be a little more personal this week, but on Friday night I had a chance to go see one of the guys I play golf with in a band, and they had their first gig. And I really didn't know what to expect. 47-year-old guy starting a garage band playing bass. I made a lot of jokes about Token finding a bass in his attic and all the stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, how good would Mike's band be? And, wow, they were fantastic. It was great to see a good friend get up there and just have fun and do something like that. He literally wanted to learn how to play bass, so he went to School of Rock and learned how to play bass and met other guys and started a band and, practiced for 2 years and then did a gig. And they were fantastic. And, it made me realize you don't have to be good at everything, Mike, right? Like, it's okay that you suck at golf because you're so good at music. Not everybody's good at everything. You're a music guy. Don't worry about trying to get better. Just come out and have a good time with us, So it was a tip of a cap to Mike and his band, Fully Depreciated.
In terms of the other end of the spectrum, I think both of us are looking at things that happened on Sunday.
I am.
First of all, I'd like to say a second tip of the cap to the AV students at Jefferson Davis High School for throwing together that great Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ad. Good job, guys. Good job. I hope that $10,000 check you got from the campaign goes to some extra computers for the computer lab. Maybe throw in some new Macs. Maybe you can make some more commercials there in a few. Was there anything more ridiculous? And actually, I was joking about the AV squad because that was an old Kennedy ad. I think it was probably one of his dad's, from the 1960s, where they just put his picture in there. Of course, they didn't tell you anything about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the ad because what can you say? He's a lunatic. He's an anti-vaxxer. And he's not just anti-COVID vax. He's anti-all vaxes. He is just completely out there. So number one reason for him being a scumbag, you are coming nowhere close to getting any kind of votes necessary to do anything in the election. So all you're going to do is you're going to steal votes away from Biden, and you're going to make it more likely that Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. That's number one. Number two, I think all political ads should be banned from the Super Bowl. That is the number one viewing day of the year. I want to see funny shit. I want to laugh. I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to have to sit there and watch a political ad that a guy is going to pay. Now, how much was it for a 30-second spot?
$7 million.
So he spent $7 million of his campaign. Actually, no, I'm sorry, $7.01 million, because the 0.01 went to Jefferson Davis High School for putting that ad together for him. But it's just ridiculous.
I gotta be honest. I thought at first when you told me that, like you were joking about the Jefferson Davis High School thing. But
no, I was kidding. No, that was a joke.
I know. It took me a minute to realize, like, no, he is actually joking. Like, I was like, hey, wait, like, there's a high school, Jefferson Davis? Like, who would name their high? Like, there is still in today's day and age?
No, there is one in HISD.
Oh, there's a Robert E. Lee High School in Baytown. Like,
sure.
Yeah,
in fact, Jefferson Davis High School, in just perfect art imitating life, they have the record for the most consecutive football defeats in the country.
That's fantastic, actually.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a tip of the cap. I mean, a negative tip of the cap. I'll put my cap back on after the $17 million just lit on fire by the He Gets Us campaign. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, they don't get him. I don't know Jesus personally. I've never met the man, but I grew up Catholic, went to plenty of classes, many of which taught by you, Scott, retreats run by you, So I have to feel like I had a pretty good idea, like, what Jesus was about, right? I have to feel like, based on studying the Bible and the gospel and the catechism and all that stuff, like, I think I get Christianity. I think I do. And the thing I don't get is the part in the Bible where Jesus said, spend $17 million on like a PR campaign. That's what we need. We need you to just light $17 million on fire. Don't help anybody. Don't use that money to like do good in your community, clothe the poor, feed the hungry, follow the fucking Beatitudes at all. Nah. We're gonna do a foot fetish feet washing commercial where a bunch of different people get their feet washed because Jesus liked feet washing. I don't know if you guys knew that. Jesus was all down for feet washing. So we're gonna do a commercial where everybody washes each other's feet. Let's forget about the fact that I'm even forgetting about the fact that like those ads are done by like crazy right wing loons like the Hobby Lobby people. Literally, the Hobby Lobby people are part of the ones paying for that money. Let's forget about that because I don't even want to take that into consideration. That's a whole nother level of scumbaggery. I'm just going on the goddamn tone deafness enough to spend 17 on a fucking $1 million on a campaign about loving Jesus. Because again, that is the last thing Jesus Christ ever would have wanted in his entire life. He wanted to help people. He wanted people to find him because of his good works. He wanted good reviews. He wanted a great Google review page. He wanted tons of people to hop on there and be like, 5 stars, Jesus Christ healed my leprosy. He didn't want, a display ad popping up saying, have you heard the word? Jesus, click here. No, that's not what he wanted. He wanted you to Google, who is Jesus? Heard good things. So this whole $17 million to say he gets us is just, I think it's one of the most tone deaf fucking things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, for those of y'all watching on camera, I'm smiling because I'm remembering a story that my parents told me because when they both went to Sam Houston State in Huntsville. And there was one like ridiculously like powerful radio station that would play, all kinds of stuff. And they had a segment of their show where they would sell religious artifacts to them. Are you ready? No, are you ready for getting some religious artifacts here? One of them was
Couple relics.
an autographed picture of Jesus.
How much was that going for?
Well, this is back in the '60s, so you gotta have to,
Man.
you it might
Priceless.
have been a
How could
whole.
you put a price on that?
It could have been a whole dollar, back in those days. The John the Baptist soap on a rope, all that, kind of good stuff.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
that
Did you
that's
ever?
honestly as good as like the people in medieval times who'd like be like, yeah, this was Jesus's foreskin. Like you could definitely like this. You could definitely buy
Did
this
you?
right here. This right here, Jesus.
Did you? Did you ever? If you ever watched old Saturday Night Live, you got to
Absolutely.
look up a guy, Father Saducci. You
I
got to look.
I'd have to see
You
the
got
the
to.
skit.
You got to have to look him up because he would sell artifacts like he was selling legit artifacts. Like one of them was the receipt for the last brunch. And so, like, and he's just hilarious. He's like, look at this. Okay, you've got 11 English muffins, you've got 11 coffees, and then you have one person ordered the pancake breakfast, and you have to know that they paid equal price 12 ways. So who's the son of a bitch that paid for and bought the pancake breakfast? I mean, it's like, okay. Now, what I'll say on the he gets us ads is like the messaging itself, I don't have a particular problem with because it doesn't come off as right wing. It comes off as, he's okay. What I don't know is what does your organization do? Obviously, people are giving you money. So what are you trying to do? And have you told us what you're trying to do? Now, you told us the Hobby Lobby's involved. That's not a good sign. Uh, So, what's the goal here? Because I would, it would be great if you came on and said like, "Hey, he gets us donate to us, and we're going to spend the money doing this. That would be fantastic, if it were something that I would want to, invest money in, to donate money. We give all the time. And one of the things like, I don't know if you've ever given to the Red Cross, for instance. But one of the things they do with the Red Cross is they not only allow you to make a generic donation, but they allow you to donate to a particular disaster. Like if I think years ago, Mattress Mac raised a bunch of money for the tsunami, which happened to happen right before Katrina. But he raised like over $1 million for the tsunami. You could sit there and say for the Red Cross, I want to help out those tsunami victims. I want to help out the wildfire victims in California. I want to help out tornado victims in Oklahoma. You can do that. But that's something specific, and that's something the Red Cross does.
And what's frustrating with me about this campaign, Scott, is I think those people who know what the money goes to are very well aware of it and will donate to it. Because let people know what the money goes to. It's anti-gay rights and trans rights. That's what it is. This fundraiser is founded by the Servant Foundation, also known as the Signatory. It's donated tens of $millions to the Allied Defense of Freedom, a conservative Christian legal group. The ADF has been involved in several legislative pushes to curtail LGBTQ rights. So, your Jesus commercials are actually a push for evangelical Christianity to curtail gay and trans rights. That is why you don't know Jesus.
Well, think about this. And is that the Jesus they portray in their commercials?
They'll wash your feet. They're fine with washing your feet. They just don't want you to have rights. Washing your feet and giving you human rights, two totally separate things.
Well, but you watch like their whole like ad campaign before this, because they've released dozens of commercials.
Yeah, they're all terrible. I've hated all of them.
It's always portrayed a tolerant Jesus.
Because Jesus was more than tolerant. He was accepting, I'd even say.
Well, my point is that they are breaking one of God's commandments. They're bearing false witness.
Scott, they break like 19 of God's command. Like half the pastors in the evangelical Christian right have cheated on their wives. Most of them are fucking adulterers.
I'm just saying that they're, what's distasteful about it is that they're misrepresenting themselves in these ads for people who are not going to do the footwork. They're not going to go on the interwebs. They're just going to sit there and go, "Oh, that sounds like a good message. I'll donate."
And that is the basis of Republican politics. Let's take advantage of Christian people who all we have to do is say Jesus enough, and they'll love us. So that's why I don't like it. That's why they're scumbags, and that's why I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. I go to golf stores instead for my hobbies.
For your crafts.
For my hobby needs, I go to PGA Tour Superstore.
Here next to these sets of wedges, we have some yarn and some.
I do my own grips. Grips. That's crafting. I got a putty knife. I got grip solvent. I got 2-sided tape. I'm essentially a crafter.
Here's some finger paints that you can play.
Can fill in the lettering on my wedges. I could do a little painting.
Well, what's funny is, and this is what I'm looking for, and I found it on Amazon. I found some stress balls that have messages on them, and I'm trying to make it to where I don't have to talk to a kid ever again. And so, like, one of them says, "Don't give up." One of them says, "I can do it." What I need is, I have 4 balls. What I need is a 5th ball that says, "Get off your phone." And if I had that, I would never have to talk to a kid ever again.
Yeah, but that one needs to be soft enough that you can throw it at kids, because the "get off your phone" ball needs to
no. These balls aren't going to hurt anybody. But then again, as your parents probably told you when you were little, it's all in good fun until somebody's eye gets poked out.
Yeah, that's always when the fun stops, is when you are bleeding from your eyeball. But speaking of the fun stopping, that's where we're going to cut this one off here. We appreciate everybody who joined us this week. It was a fun time, as always, getting to hop in and discuss the latest events in the sporting world. Be sure to tune in next week as we have our first official report from spring training after the guys have been down there. We'll have some looks at everybody, and we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about the Texans' free agency as we get prepped for a very exciting offseason. But until then, I've been Tim Costello. He's always Scott Barzilla, and we are born on the Bayou.